Hey everyone, Elisa here, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to test out your product idea. For those of you who are new here, hello and welcome. In this channel, I provide product, career, and adulting content. So if any of that is interesting to you, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you know the minute I upload new content. And now for those of you who are already subscribed, I want to take a second and say thank you. I just hit that 1,000 subscriber milestone and I feel very grateful and have really enjoyed the journey of getting to know all of you just by communicating in comments or in other ways. So thank you so much for your support. I hope that I can continue to provide helpful content for you. Also, I know I've been a little bit MIA with the video uploads, but I promise I will do better. I must do better. Anyway, let's dive in. So you might be in a position where you have a product idea that you think can really make it, and that is super exciting. Who knows, you might have the next unicorn idea, and that's pretty cool. But how do you actually know that your product idea is that great? Like, you probably think it's really good, but what if no one else does? What if you were to spend your whole life savings on building out this product and when it goes to market, no one actually buys it? That would be a major letdown and bummer and just really sad in general. So how do you avoid that scenario? Well, the answer is by doing a lot of testing. You see, testing is really important because it reduces the risk that your product idea is not as good as you think it might be. Now, there are 3 types of risks that you'll want to test for before you start building out your product idea: desirability risk, viability risk, and feasibility risk. Desirability risk is pretty straightforward. It's the risk that no one will want or desire your product. Viability risk is the risk that your product idea can't actually earn enough money. And feasibility risk is the risk that your product idea is not really practical or maybe even not possible to build. So if you want to reduce those 3 risks, you need to do both user testing and feasibility research. But in this video, I am going to focus on user testing. So I am going to dive into the 4 actions that you need to take if you want to get started testing out your product idea. These 4 actions are to 1, list out all of your hypotheses, then prioritize your hypotheses, then get into actual testing, and then the last step is to assess your results and take action. So let's start with that first step, which is listing out all of your hypotheses. So if you have a product idea, whether you know it or not, you have a set of hypotheses or assumptions that you've made, making you think that your product idea is a good one. So at minimum, you have a hypothesis that you are solving a significant customer problem. You have a hypothesis that people would buy your product, and you have a hypothesis that it is feasible to build out your product idea. So what you'll first want to do is literally write down the full list of all of the hypotheses that you are making. Now, once you have all of your hypotheses listed out, it's time to move on to the second step, which is to prioritize your hypotheses. Now, you'll want to prioritize testing on the hypotheses that are most critical for the success of your product idea, and you'll want to prioritize them by the amount of evidence that you have. So if you have hypotheses that have no evidence to support those hypotheses, you'll definitely want to do extra testing on those. You can plot your hypotheses on a chart like this one, and you'll want to focus on the hypotheses that fall into that upper right-hand quadrant. Now, at some point, you might want to test all of the hypotheses, but again, the most important ones for you to test are the ones that are most critical to the success of your product idea and the ones where you don't have a lot of evidence to support them. Okay, now that you have your hypotheses prioritized, it's time to do some testing. Now, there are tons of different ways for you to test out your hypotheses, but I'm going to tell you just 5 of my favorite testing techniques. And then if you want to check out more, you can definitely check out the Testing Business Ideas book Or you can simply look online for different ways to test out your product idea. There's a ton of great methodologies out there, and a lot of them work really well for different types of product ideas. So I recommend you try out a few and figure out what product testing techniques give you the best results. So I am going to tell you my 5 favorite testing strategies. First of which is customer interviews. Now, customer interviews are low cost, accessible, and quick to do. So I highly recommend doing at least some customer interviews to validate if you're solving a real customer problem. Now, the biggest risk with customer interviews is that you're not asking your questions in a way that will lead to really unbiased answers. Maybe you're leading people to just validate that your idea is a good one. So it's important to be really strategic with the questions you're asking and be sure to not introduce any bias into your conversations. Now, I have a separate video where I go into my 5 favorite customer interview questions that reduce bias as much as possible. I'll link that somewhere up in this corner. There is also a book that I highly recommend called The Mom Test, which helps you ask the right customer interview questions that lead to the best unbiased answers. A second way to test out your ideas is to look at discussion forums online. So you might want to research if people are talking about your problem statement online in platforms such as Reddit or Twitter. Sometimes you might find that thousands of people are literally talking about the exact problem that your product idea would solve. And so not only does this validate that there might be a need out there, but it also gives you a list of people that you can reach out to for more customer interviews. A third testing strategy you can do is a search trend analysis. You can use tools like Google Trends or Keyword Planner, which will show you if your problem statement has been searched a lot of times, and it will give you graphs to see how many people are searching for these keywords. Now, this is really important in validating if there's a need there, and if you get results that show that a lot of people are searching about the problem that you're solving, that's great data to include in your pitch deck. It shows that the need is out there. The fourth testing idea is called the Wizard of Oz technique. Now, in this testing strategy, you have a bit of a front end for your product idea, but all of the logic or calculations is actually done manually. This comic shows what I'm talking about with the Wizard of Oz technique. You can see that one person thinks they are using a speech-to-text product when in reality, someone is actually manually typing out what this person is saying. This technique is great because it gives you really strong evidence and it doesn't require that you do a lot of programming to test out your product idea. A fifth type of testing that I like to do is just general prototyping. Now, there are a lot of different ways for you to prototype out your idea, all the way from a very low fidelity prototype, like a paper prototype or a storyboard, all the way to something that's higher fidelity, like a clickable prototype or even a minimum viable prototype. Now, although prototypes generally take a little bit more time to set up, the evidence you get from these prototypes are really, really strong. So I highly recommend that you do at least some prototype testing throughout your product idea validation. So those are a few different testing techniques that I highly recommend. Now, once you're done testing some or maybe most of your hypotheses, it's time to go to that last step, which is assessing your test results and taking action. Now, there are 3 outcomes that can come from your testing. The first outcome is that you validate that your product idea is awesome, in which case you should include all of your testing results in your pitch deck to show that you're solving a real problem and that people are really interested in the product idea that you have. A second possible outcome is that your testing results give you an idea to pivot on your idea. Maybe your original idea wasn't quite right, but over the course of user testing, you found a different path that could actually be even more successful. And then the third possible outcome from all of this testing could be that you've disproven your product idea. Maybe your idea wasn't actually as good as you thought it might have been. And although this can feel a little bit disheartening, it's really fortuitous to be able to identify that your product idea is not that great before you actually spend a ton of time and money building out your product. So all of the outcomes from testing are actually good ones. So there you have it. Those are 4 steps you should take if you think you have the next big product idea. I hope this video was helpful for you. If it was, please press that thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. And of course, if you want to hear more content from me, please subscribe. Thanks again, and I will talk to you next time. Bye, friends.